The golden dust of ancient Mesopotamia settles over a narrative thousands of years old. We are told the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, departed long ago. They left behind towering ziggurats and the first blueprints of civilization, retreating into the silence of the stars. But what if the departure was merely a transition into the shadows? Imagine a world where the architects of humanity never boarded their celestial craft. Instead, they adapted. They moved from the visible throne to the invisible corridors of influence. Today, we look at the monoliths of our modern era through a different lens. We ask if ancient bloodlines still pulse beneath the surface of global power. From the depths of the ocean to the heights of our digital architecture, we search for the fingerprints of the gods who stayed. The evidence is not in the stars, but hidden in plain sight. The sun hangs low over the modern Iraqi desert, casting long, distorted shadows across the mounds of Tel El Mukayyar. Here, the remains of the great ziggurat of Ur rise like a jagged tooth from the flat horizon. To the casual observer, this is a graveyard of baked mud and forgotten rituals. But to those who study the oldest records of humanity, these ruins are the crime scene of a cosmic disappearance. For thousands of years, the prevailing narrative of history has told us that the Sumerian gods, those known as the Anunnaki, eventually grew weary of their creation and ascended back to the heavens. We are told they left behind nothing but clay tablets and the empty shells of their temples. However, when we look closer at the transition between the ancient world and the dawn of modern history, the seams of this departure begin to fray. The transition is too neat, the silence too calculated. It suggests that what we call an exit was actually a transition of power. In the southern reaches of Mesopotamia, the first cities did not simply grow from the earth. They exploded into existence with a sophistication that defies traditional models of social evolution. Within a few centuries, the Sumerians developed complex mathematics, advanced irrigation, and an intricate legal system. They credited all of it to the Anunnaki. In the cuneiform texts, these beings are never described as metaphors or figments of a primitive imagination. They are physical presences. They eat, they drink, they argue, and they govern. They are described as the princely offspring of Anu, the Sky Father. The texts tell us they descended to Earth to mine gold and reshape the world to their specifications. And then, around 4,000 years ago, the records suggest they simply stopped walking among men. But consider the landscape of the ancient Near East at the moment of this supposed departure. The great cities of Ur, Nippur, and Eridu are at their height. The infrastructure of the gods is fully operational. If a dominant, technologically superior race had actually packed their ships and returned to a distant planet like Nibiru, the resulting vacuum of power would have been catastrophic. We should see a total collapse, a regression into tribalism as the masters of the world vanish. Instead, we see something far more subtle and far more suspicious. We see the rise of the intermediary. The kings of Sumer and later Babylon began to title themselves as the shadows of the gods. They claimed they were no longer ruling alongside the Anunnaki, but on behalf of them. The physical presence of the deity in the inner sanctum of the ziggurat was replaced by a statue, a representation that acted as a placeholder. This is the moment the departure illusion begins. It is the moment when the direct, physical governance of the Anunnaki shifts into a clandestine, occulted form of control. By convincing the populace that the gods have left, the gods effectively remove themselves from the target of human resentment and rebellion. They move from the throne room to the shadows behind the throne. The dust of the Sumerian gods is not the ash of a dead fire. It is the smoke from a screen, Look at the way the Anunnaki are depicted in their final days of public appearance. They are often shown holding small containers, bags that some researchers suggest contain the tools of their influence. They are surrounded by symbols of the pineal gland and the tree of life. These are the motifs of genetic manipulation and psychological mastery. If you are a being of immense longevity and technological prowess, why would you leave a planet you have spent hundreds of thousands of years terraforming? Why would you abandon a slave race that has finally become productive and numerous? You would not. You would simply change the method of your management. The illusion of departure serves a dual purpose. First, it allows the human population to feel a sense of autonomy, which is a far more effective way to prevent revolt than overt slavery. A prisoner who believes he is free is much easier to manage than one who stares at his chains. Second, it allows the Anunnaki to observe and direct human progress from a position of absolute safety. As the Sumerian period ends and the chaotic eras of the Bronze Age collapse begin, we see the fingerprints of this invisible hand everywhere. The sudden shift in religious practices toward an invisible, celestial deity mirrors the tactical retreat of a physical governor into a fortified bunker. The archaeological record shows that the temples were not abandoned. They were repurposed. The inner chambers of the ziggurats remained restricted, accessible only to a select group of high priests and royal bloodlines. These individuals claimed to receive instructions from the departed gods through dreams, omens, and secret rituals. If the Anunnaki had truly left Earth, these rituals would have eventually failed and been discarded. Instead, they became the foundation of every major power structure that followed. The priesthoods of Mesopotamia became the architects of the Egyptian mysteries, the Greek oracles, and the Roman state religion. The continuity is unbroken. The language changed, the names of the gods were translated, but the underlying structure of a hidden authority remained. We must ask ourselves what a planetary occupation looks like after several millennia. It does not look like soldiers on every street corner. That is the crude method of human empires. A truly advanced civilization would govern through the control of information, the manipulation of belief, and the preservation of specific genetic lineages. The Sumerian king lists are obsessed with the idea that kingship was lowered from heaven. Even after the Great Flood, when the Anunnaki supposedly took a step back, the lists continue to track the descent of power through blood. This obsession with the purity of the ruling class is not a human invention. It is a biological directive left behind by the architects. If the Anunnaki remained, they would have needed a way to stay hidden from the rapidly increasing human population. The vast, empty spaces of the ancient world provided plenty of opportunities. The deep subterranean networks beneath the mountains of the Near East, the unexplored depths of the oceans, and the high, thin air of the plateaus were all places where a superior technology could remain out of sight. But their most effective hiding place was within the culture itself. They integrated their presence into the very fabric of human society. They became the architects of our calendars, the masters of our mathematics, and the silent partners in our wars. Think of the Sumerian scribe, hunched over a damp clay tablet under the amber glow of an oil lamp. He records the laws of Hammurabi or the laments of Uar. He writes that the gods have retreated to the distant sky. But as he writes, he is using a base 60 mathematical system given to his ancestors by those very gods. He is living in a city designed on their geometric principles. He is following a calendar that tracks their celestial movements. The scribe believes the gods are gone, yet every thought he thinks is structured by their influence. This is the ultimate departure illusion. You do not need to be physically present to rule if you have already designed the mind of the subject. The dust of the Sumerians is often treated as a sterile remnant of the past. We brush it off statues and filter it through sieves at excavation sites. But this dust is radioactive with the truth. When we examine the suddenness of the Sumerian decline, it looks less like a civilization dying and more like a corporation moving its headquarters under the cover of night. The wealth of the temples was moved. The knowledge of the high priests was carried away to secret enclaves. The Anunnaki did not leave Earth. They moved into the basement of our civilization. As we move forward through the history of the ancient world, we see the same patterns repeating. The gods of the Greeks, the Romans, and the Norse all bear a striking resemblance to the original Sumerian pantheon. They have the same temperaments, the same hierarchies, and the same penchant for interfering in human affairs while remaining largely unseen. The names change from Enlil to Zeus, from Enki to Poseidon, from Inanna to Aphrodite. These are not just cultural echoes. They are the tactical rebrandings of a persistent presence. The Anunnaki stayed, and they watched as we built empires in their image, never realizing that the blueprint had been handed to us by someone still standing in the room. The illusion of their departure is the foundation upon which our modern world is built. It allowed for the rise of secularism, for the development of independent science, and for the belief in human progress. But if the architects never left, then our progress has always been directed. Our science has always been limited by the boundaries they set. Our independence is a gift they allow us to enjoy because it keeps us productive. The question is no longer where they went, but how they managed to stay hidden for so long while remaining the masters of the house. The evidence is not in the stars. It is in the very dust we walk upon, the same dust that once blew through the streets of Eridu, carrying the whispers of beings who never intended to say goodbye. We turn our gaze downward, away from the constellations that once bore their names, toward the silence of the earth beneath our feet. For generations, we have assumed that if the Anunnaki were to remain, they would do so in the high places, the mountain peaks, or the distant orbits of our solar system. Yet, the ancient Sumerian texts point toward a different destination. They speak of the Abzu, the primordial abyss of sweet waters where the god Enki established his throne. It was not a place of the dead, but a place of life, a subterranean laboratory and sanctuary far removed from the turbulent cycles of the surface world. If we consider the possibility that these beings never left, the vast, unexplored interior of our planet becomes the most logical candidate for their persistence. To understand the hollow Earth hypothesis in the context of the Anunnaki, we must first strip away the caricatures of science fiction and look at the physical and mythological framework that suggests a world within our own. The traditional model of the Earth is one of solid layers, a crust, a mantle, and a core. However, seismic data has always contained anomalies that puzzle geologists. There are regions within the mantle where seismic waves slow down or behave in ways that suggest massive voids or dense, structured compositions that do not align with a simple liquid or solid state. To an advanced civilization like the Anunnaki, these deep Earth anomalies might not be geological accidents, but rather deliberate excavations or naturally occurring habitats. In the Sumerian worldview, the Earth was not merely a rock in space, but a complex, multi-layered organism. Enki, the master of wisdom and the architect of humanity, chose the Abzu as his primary residence. While many modern scholars interpret the Abzu as a metaphor for the groundwater table or the deep ocean, the descriptions in the myths are far more physical. It is described as a place with its own light, its own gardens, and its own atmosphere. It was a realm of technology and creation. If the Anunnaki faced a changing climate on the surface, perhaps brought about by the end of the last ice age or a shifting magnetic pole, the stability of the inner Earth would have offered a perfect refuge. The transition from the surface to the subterranean would have been a matter of survival. On the surface, civilizations are subject to the whims of the sun, the impact of asteroids, and the slow erosion of time. Below the crust, the environment is constant. The temperature remains stable, and the thick layer of rock provides an impenetrable shield against cosmic radiation and planetary catastrophes. For a race with a lifespan measured in thousands of years, the chaotic and violent surface of the Earth might have seemed like a temporary and dangerous workshop, while the interior was their true home. This concept leads us to the broader hollow Earth hypothesis, a theory that has persisted across cultures and centuries. From the Tibetan legends of Agartha to the Nordic tales of a land within the north wind, the idea of a hidden world is a universal human memory. Could these stories be the distorted echoes of a genuine presence? If the Anunnaki moved their operations underground, they would have needed vast amounts of energy. The internal heat of the Earth, the very core of our planet, would provide an inexhaustible power source. By tapping into the geothermal energy of the mantle, they could sustain a civilization that far exceeds our own in both longevity and technical capability. Imagine, for a moment, the architecture of such a world. We see glimpses of it in the massive megalithic structures found across the globe. Sites like Derinkuyu in Turkey, a staggering multi-level underground city that could house 20,000 people, suggests that ancient humans were taught the art of subterranean living. But while Derinkuyu is impressive, it is a primitive shadow of what a high-tech Anunnaki habitat would be. These would not be damp caves, but vast crystalline vaults, lit by artificial suns or bioluminescent flora, where the distinction between technology and nature has been completely erased. The logistics of such a hidden sovereignty require a method of observation. If they are below us, they are not disconnected. The numerous reports of unidentified aerial phenomena emerging from or plunging into the oceans provide a clue. The oceans, particularly the deep trenches, serve as the most effective gateways between the surface and the interior. The crushing pressures of the abyss, which are a barrier to us, would be easily navigated by a civilization capable of interstellar travel. These waters are the doors to the Abzu, the transition zones through which the subterranean sovereigns monitor their creation. This perspective shifts our understanding of human history. Instead of being an abandoned species, we become a surface-dwelling experiment, monitored by a hidden neighbor. The Anunnaki would not need to rule us openly. By occupying the interior of the planet, they maintain total control over the planetary environment and the most precious resources, while leaving the surface populations to build and destroy their own civilizations in the light of the sun. They are the silent observers of our wars, our breakthroughs, and our failures, always present but always out of reach. The question then arises as to why they would choose such a reclusive existence. Perhaps the answer lies in their own evolution. Having mastered the material world and the biological engineering that created humanity, they may have moved toward a more contemplative or administrative role. The interior of the Earth provides the ultimate privacy, a sanctuary where they can pursue their own goals without the interference of a growing and often volatile human population. They have become the stewards of the planet's internal mechanisms, ensuring that the Earth remains viable for their long-term interests. Scientific evidence for this is often dismissed, yet it lingers in the margins of our data. Deep Earth mineralogy has revealed the existence of vast reservoirs of water trapped hundreds of miles below the surface. This water, held within the molecular structure of minerals like ringwoodite, may exceed the volume of all our surface oceans combined. This confirms that the Abzu of the Sumerians, the Great Deep, is a physical reality. Where there is water and where there is energy, there is the potential for life. And where there is the potential for life, a superior intelligence would find a way to thrive. Furthermore, the magnetic field of the Earth, which protects us from the solar wind, is generated by the movement of the core. If the Anunnaki are indeed living in the mantle or the outer core, they would be the masters of this field. Our reliance on electronic technology and satellite communications makes us incredibly vulnerable to fluctuations in this magnetic environment. By holding the keys to the inner Earth, they hold the keys to our modern world. They are the sovereigns of the very forces that allow our civilization to function. As we walk through our cities and across our fields, we are standing on the roof of a much older and much more powerful world. The stories of gods descending into the underworld were not myths of death, but accounts of their return home. They did not ascend to the stars to leave us behind. They descended into the foundations of the world to watch us grow. The dust of Eridu may blow through our streets, but the masters of Eridu are still here, beneath the bedrock, moving through the silent corridors of the Abzu, waiting for the moment when their presence must once again be made known. This hidden presence creates a profound sense of proximity. The Anunnaki are not light years away. They are miles beneath us. The tremors we feel, the strange sounds heard coming from the deep earth in remote locations, and the unexplained movements in our deepest waters are the whispers of their industry. They are the subterranean sovereigns, the silent architects who have traded the glory of the sky for the absolute security of the earth. We are the tenants on the surface, living in the shadow of a power that resides in the very heart of our world. The implications of this are vast. If the hollow earth hypothesis is the true home of the Anunnaki, then our search for extraterrestrial intelligence has been pointed in the wrong direction. We have been listening for signals from distant stars while the originators of our species have been right here, shielded by the crust of the earth. This realization demands a new kind of archaeology, one that looks not only at the ruins of the past but at the living anomalies of the present. It suggests that the history of humanity is not a story of abandonment, but a story of a hidden, ongoing relationship between the surface and the deep. The sovereignty of the interior is absolute. From their vantage point below, the Anunnaki can see the ripples of our progress and the tremors of our destruction. They remain the silent partners in our planetary journey, the ghosts in the machine of the Earth. As we peel back the layers of our planet's mysteries, we find that the deepest secrets are not buried in time, but in the very space beneath our feet, where the ancient gods continue to reign in the eternal light of the inner world. The search for the Anunnaki often leads the eye upward toward the stars or downward into the depths of the earth. However, a growing number of researchers suggest that the most profound evidence of their presence is not found in stone or soil, but within the very fabric of our being. We turn our gaze to the microscopic level, where the double helix of human deoxyribonucleic acid tells a story that mainstream science struggles to fully explain. If these ancient beings truly engineered humanity as the Sumerian tablets suggest, then our bodies are not merely products of natural selection. They are living archives. They are the biological blueprints of a celestial intervention that occurred hundreds of thousands of years ago. The narrative of the Anunnaki suggests they arrived on this planet and found a primitive hominid already in existence. According to the ancient texts, they did not create life from nothing, but rather they modified what was already here. They merged their own essence with the biology of the terrestrial primate to create a worker, a being capable of understanding complex instructions while remaining subservient. This hybrid being is what the Hebrew scriptures later called the Nephilim, the fallen ones, or the giants who were of old. To trace the alien genome is to look for the anomalies in our genetic code that distinguish us from every other creature on this planet. Modern genetics has identified a curious phenomenon known as the accelerated human evolution. While most species take millions of years to develop significant cognitive leaps, the human brain expanded at a rate that defies standard evolutionary models. Between 2 million and 50,000 years ago, the human cranium grew in size and complexity with a speed that some biologists describe as a biological miracle. We see the sudden appearance of the FOXP2 gene, which granted us the unique ability for complex speech. We see the emergence of advanced problem-solving and symbolic thought. In the eyes of those who follow the Anunnaki theory, this was not a random mutation. It was a targeted upgrade. We must consider the vast stretches of our genetic code that scientists once dismissed as junk DNA. For decades, it was believed that over 90% of the human genome served no purpose, acting as a mere byproduct of evolutionary history. Today, we understand that this dark matter of the genome acts as a sophisticated regulatory system, a series of switches and instructions that control how our genes are expressed. Some theorists propose that this junk DNA is actually a dormant set of instructions left behind by the Anunnaki. It is a latent operating system waiting for a specific environmental trigger or a frequency to be activated. If we are indeed a manufactured species, our creators may have left a backdoor in our biology, a way to influence or reclaim their creation at a later date. Perhaps the most startling evidence of a divergent bloodline is found in the rhesus factor of human blood. The majority of the human population is rhesus positive, meaning they carry a specific protein inherited from a common ancestor shared with the rhesus monkey. However, approximately 15% of humans are rhesus negative. These individuals lack this protein entirely. In nature, when a rhesus-negative mother carries a rhesus-positive child, her body often treats the fetus as a foreign invader, producing antibodies to attack the blood of the infant. This is a biological contradiction that rarely occurs elsewhere in the natural world. Why would a mother's body reject her own offspring? Some researchers argue that rhesus-negative blood did not evolve on this planet through natural means. They point to the fact that this blood type appeared suddenly in the human timeline, specifically among populations in Western Europe and the Basque region. These populations often possess unique linguistic and cultural traits that set them apart from their neighbors. If the Anunnaki were interbreeding with human women as the Book of Genesis and the Book of Enoch describe, the rhesus-negative factor might be the physical signature of that hybridity. It is the blood of the gods, a legacy of an extraterrestrial lineage that continues to circulate through the human population today. The physical manifestations of this ancient genome are not limited to blood chemistry. Throughout history, we find accounts of individuals who possessed physical traits that mirrored the descriptions of the Anunnaki themselves. The ancient Sumerian statues often depict their gods with large, penetrating eyes and elongated features. In various parts of the world, specifically in Paracas, Peru, and parts of Malta, archaeologists have discovered human remains with naturally elongated skulls. These are not the result of artificial cranial deformation or head binding. These skulls possess a cranial volume that is 25% larger than a standard human skull, and they contain only one parietal plate instead of two. Preliminary deoxyribonucleic acid testing on these remains has revealed mitochondrial mutations that are unknown in any human, primate, or animal known to date. The data suggests we are looking at a subspecies of humanity that did not originate from the known evolutionary tree. If these elongated skulls represent the physical form of the Nephilim, then the Anunnaki genome was once a dominant force on the surface of the earth. It suggests a time when the children of the gods walked openly among men, ruling as priest-kings and demigods. We also see the persistence of certain phenotypic traits that are often associated with the ancient elite. The sudden emergence of blue eyes, for example, has been traced back to a single genetic mutation that occurred between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago near the Black Sea. This coincides perfectly with the timeline of the Sumerian civilization and the reported departure or withdrawal of the Anunnaki. In many ancient cultures, blue eyes were seen as a mark of the gods, a sign of divine favor or celestial ancestry. Even the term blue blood, used to describe royal lineages, may have its roots in a literal biological difference. It refers to a time when the ruling class believed their veins carried a different substance than that of the common man. The concept of the divine right of kings was not originally a political philosophy. It was a biological claim. The first kings of Sumer, Egypt, and Mesoamerica claimed their authority based on their genealogy. They were the direct descendants of the sky people. They possessed the manna, the life force, and the superior intellect granted by their alien progenitors. If these bloodlines were carefully preserved through thousands of years of selective breeding, it is possible that the descendants of the Anunnaki are still among us, occupying positions of influence and power. They may not look different on the surface, but their genetic potential remains distinct. As we move into the era of advanced biotechnology and gene editing, the question of our origin becomes even more urgent. We are now developing the tools to rewrite our own code, to remove diseases, and to enhance our capabilities. In doing so, are we simply discovering the methods that were used to create us? Are we inadvertently following a path that was laid out for us eons ago? Some believe that the recent push for human enhancement and the integration of technology with biology is a sign that the Anunnaki genome is being reactivated. We are returning to the state of the Lulu Amalu, the perfected worker, or perhaps we are finally ascending to the level of our creators. The implications of a hidden alien genome are staggering. It suggests that humanity is not a single unified species, but a complex mosaic of terrestrial and extraterrestrial influences. It means that the wars, the migrations, and the social hierarchies of our history may have been driven by biological imperatives we are only beginning to understand. The struggle between different bloodlines, the preservation of certain lineages, and the sudden bursts of human genius all point toward a hidden hand at work within ourselves. We live in a world where we believe we have mapped every corner of our history, yet we remain a mystery to ourselves. We look at the ruins of Ur and Babylon and see the ghosts of a dead civilization. We fail to realize that the most enduring monument of the Anunnaki is not a pyramid or a ziggurat. It is the 3 billion base pairs of our genome. We are the vessels for their legacy. Every time a child is born with a rare blood type, every time a genius reaches beyond the limits of known science, and every time we feel a strange yearning for a home among the stars, the alien genome is speaking. The blood of the Nephilim is not a myth. It is a chemical reality that flows through the heart of the modern world. As we continue to peel back the layers of our own biology, we may find that the gods never left because they are a part of us. They are encoded in our survival instincts, our capacity for language, and our drive to build civilizations. The final discovery of the Anunnaki will not happen in a remote desert or an underwater city. It will happen in the laboratory, as we finally recognize the signature of the architects written in the language of life itself. We are the evidence we have been searching for, a species with a forgotten father and a planet that has always been more than it seems. The traces of the alien genome are the silent witnesses to a history that is still being written in the pulsing rhythm of the human heart. The desert wind carries more than just sand across the plains of Baalbek. It carries a silence that feels heavy, a weight born of stone so massive that modern cranes would struggle to lift it. Here, in the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter, lie the trilithon stones. 3 massive blocks of limestone, each weighing nearly 800 tons, are set into the foundation with a precision that defies the primitive tools of the Roman era. To the casual observer, these are ruins. To the investigative mind, they are evidence of an engineering logic that operates on a scale far beyond the requirements of mere worship. If the Anunnaki remained on Earth, they did not hide in the shadows alone. They left behind a skeletal framework of stone that may serve a purpose far more functional than burial or prayer. These are the architectural anchors, the permanent fixtures of a global system that might still be waiting for the right signal to awaken. The narrative of human history suggests that these structures were built by thousands of laborers using ropes, wooden rollers, and sheer physical will. Yet, the closer one examines the stone, the more that explanation begins to fracture. In the high Andes of Peru, the site of Pumapunku presents a different kind of mystery. Here, the stones are not just large, they are complex. Blocks of diorite and andesite are carved with intricate internal angles, recesses, and grooves that resemble the modular components of a modern computer motherboard. These stones were not meant to be looked at. They were meant to be assembled. The precision is measured in fractions of a millimeter, a feat that today requires diamond-tipped saws and computer-controlled milling machines. In a documentary lens, we observe the way these stones fit together without mortar. A single sheet of paper cannot pass between them. This is not the aesthetic of a Bronze Age civilization. This is the signature of a high technology that treats stone like plastic. If the Anunnaki were a spacefaring race with an understanding of the fundamental laws of the universe, stone would be their most logical medium for long-term technology. Unlike metal, which oxidizes and decays, or plastic, which breaks down under ultraviolet light, stone is eternal. A machine made of stone is a machine that can wait for 10,000 years without losing its shape. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries, it has been categorized as a tomb, yet no mummy was ever found within its original chambers. Its internal structure is a marvel of acoustic engineering. The king's chamber is lined with massive granite beams, a material rich in quartz crystals. Quartz is piezoelectric, meaning it generates an electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress. The weight of the pyramid itself, millions of tons of limestone pressing down on that granite core, creates a constant state of pressure. When researchers measure the acoustic properties of these chambers, they find that they are tuned to a specific frequency. The entire structure acts as a resonator. It is not a silent monument, but a humming heart, vibrating at a frequency that matches the low pulse of the earth itself. This leads to a provocative possibility. The pyramids and the monoliths scattered across the globe are not passive markers of the past. They are latent technology. They are components of a planetary scale machine that utilizes the natural energy of the earth, the geomagnetism and the seismic vibrations, to perform a function we have yet to fully understand. This concept of a global power grid is not merely speculative when one looks at the geographic distribution of these sites. If you draw lines between Giza, Stonehenge, Easter Island, and the ruins of Angkor, a geometric pattern emerges. These sites are not placed randomly. They are situated on the nodes of a planetary grid, at points where the Earth's magnetic field is most concentrated. This is the world of ley lines and telluric currents, a subtle energy network that the ancient architects seem to have mastered. The Anunnaki, if they remain, do not need to build new power plants. They have already built them. These sites are the anchors, stabilizing the planetary energy field or perhaps acting as beacons for deep space communication. We walk through them as tourists, marveling at their size. While the very ground beneath our feet might be pulsing with a data stream we are simply not equipped to receive. The secret lies in the resonance. Modern science is only beginning to understand how sound can manipulate matter. Acoustic levitation, the use of sound waves to lift and move objects, is now a reality in laboratory settings. If the Anunnaki possessed a sophisticated understanding of vibrational physics, the construction of these megaliths becomes a matter of harmonic resonance rather than brute force. They could have sung the stones into place, using sound to negate the effects of gravity. This would explain why so many cultures, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all share myths of gods who moved mountains with music or words of power. But why leave these machines behind? If the Anunnaki stayed, why are these structures currently dormant? The answer may lie in the concept of a master key. A computer is nothing more than a collection of silicon and metal until the power is turned on and the software is loaded. The megalithic sites may be waiting for a specific astronomical alignment or a specific frequency trigger to become active once again. We see the hardware, but we lack the software. In the mountains of Ethiopia, the monolithic churches of Lalibela are carved downward into the solid volcanic rock. They are not built up. They are hollowed out. The precision of the drainage systems and the interconnected tunnels suggests a level of planning that exceeds the needs of a medieval congregation. Everywhere we look, from the sunken ruins of Yonaguni off the coast of Japan to the massive stone spheres of Costa Rica, we find the same obsession with geometric perfection and geological permanence. The documentary camera pans across the landscape of Carnac in France, where thousands of standing stones stretch for miles in perfect rows. They look like an antenna array, a massive field of stone sensors designed to catch something from the sky or the earth. We are beginning to realize that these sites are not isolated incidents of human ingenuity. They are part of a unified, global architectural project. The materials themselves tell the story. The use of granite, basalt, and diorite is consistent across the most mysterious sites. These are stones with high concentrations of silica and iron. They are conductive. They are capable of storing information and energy. In our own modern age, we use silicon to create the chips that power our world. The Anunnaki simply did it on a grander scale. They used the crust of the earth as their circuit board. If this technology is latent, the implications are staggering. It means that we are living on top of a dormant alien infrastructure. The mountains we climb and the ruins we photograph might be parts of a communication network that is still monitoring the solar system. It suggests that the Anunnaki did not leave Earth because they had already transformed the planet into a permanent station. They do not need to maintain the structures because they built them to be self-sustaining, powered by the rotation of the Earth and the pull of the Moon. As we look at the colossal statues of Easter Island, the Moai, we see faces that look upward, toward the stars. They are positioned on stone platforms called ahu, many of which contain the same sophisticated masonry found in the Andes. These figures are often seen as ancestors, but they could also be seen as guardians of the grid. Their placement ensures that the energy points of the island remain marked and stabilized. The serious, observational tone of our inquiry leads us to a singular conclusion. The history of human architecture is not a slow climb from mud bricks to skyscrapers. It is a story of a sudden, inexplicable peak of megalithic mastery followed by thousands of years of decline. We did not learn to build these things. We inherited the ruins of a civilization that already knew how. The Anunnaki left us their hardware. They left it in plain sight, knowing that we would treat it with reverence, even if we did not understand its purpose. These structures are the anchors of their presence. They are the physical proof that the Earth was once, and perhaps still is, an integrated part of a much larger cosmic operation. While we search for signals from distant stars, the very stone walls of our own ancestors may be vibrating with the answers we seek. The technology is not gone. It is simply waiting. It is latent, held in the crystalline structure of the granite, preserved in the mathematical ratios of the pyramids, and anchored in the bedrock of the world. We are not the masters of this planet. We are the temporary tenants of an ancient, automated estate, and the masters may never have moved out. They are simply waiting for the house to wake up. The sun rises over the Witwatersrand Basin in South Africa, casting long, jagged shadows across a landscape defined by industrial scars. Here, the earth is not merely soil and stone. It is a vault. Deep beneath the surface, human beings labor in conditions that defy the limits of biological endurance. They descend into the Mponing gold mine, a subterranean labyrinth that reaches 4 kilometers into the crust of the planet. The heat at these depths is stifling, often exceeding 60 degrees Celsius, requiring massive refrigeration plants to keep the air breathable. This is the deepest man-made point on Earth. It is a place where the weight of the world above creates a constant, low-frequency hum of tectonic tension. We must ask why a species would exert such monumental effort, risking life and limb, to extract a soft, yellow metal that has almost no practical use in the survival of a hunter-gatherer or an agrarian society. The documentary lens shifts from the darkness of the mines to the sterile, brightly lit floors of a modern bullion vault. Millions of bars sit in silent rows, guarded by layers of steel and sophisticated surveillance. Throughout human history, gold has been the singular constant. It does not tarnish. It does not decay. It is virtually indestructible. If the ancient Sumerian accounts are to be taken as a hidden history rather than mere mythology, the Anunnaki came to this world with a specific singular hunger. They required gold to repair their own thinning atmosphere, using it as a reflective shield against cosmic radiation. If they never truly left, then the global infrastructure of modern mining may be seen as the continuation of a project that began hundreds of thousands of years ago. We are no longer slaves in the literal sense of the word, yet our entire global economy remains anchored to the extraction and storage of this specific element. In the modern era, the hunger for gold has transitioned from the ornamental to the technological. We find that gold is essential for the very things that would characterize an advanced, spacefaring civilization. It is the perfect conductor. It is used in every smartphone, every computer, and every satellite orbiting our planet. More importantly, it is the primary material used by NASA and other space agencies to protect delicate instruments and astronauts from the searing heat and radiation of the sun. The visors of space helmets are coated in a layer of gold so thin it is transparent, yet it provides a shield that no other substance can replicate. When we look at our own burgeoning technology, we are using gold for the exact same purposes the ancient texts attribute to the Anunnaki. This raises a provocative possibility. Is our technological evolution being guided toward a specific goal? Are we being encouraged to refine the very materials our silent overseers require? The scale of modern mining is a testament to this relentless drive. In the Graberg mine in Indonesia, or the massive open pits of Nevada, the earth is moved by the millions of tons. We have developed machines the size of apartment buildings to chew through the mountains. From an orbital perspective, these mines look like geometric patterns carved into the skin of the world. They are visible from space, marking the locations where the planet is being hollowed out. If an extraterrestrial presence were monitoring Earth from a distance, these mining sites would be the primary indicators of intelligent, organized activity. They would see a species obsessed with pulling a specific heavy element from the depths and concentrating it in specific, highly guarded locations. This leads us to the anomalies observed not in the Earth, but in the sky above it. For decades, astronomers and satellite trackers have noted the presence of objects in Earth's orbit that do not align with known human launches. The most famous of these is the legendary Black Knight satellite. While skeptics dismiss it as thermal blankets or space debris, the persistent reports of a dark, metallic object in a polar orbit date back to a time before any human nation had the capability to launch a craft into such a trajectory. A polar orbit is highly efficient for mapping and monitoring the entire surface of the planet as it rotates beneath. If the Anunnaki remained behind to oversee their investment, such a vantage point would be the logical choice. It would allow for the constant surveillance of resource extraction and the monitoring of atmospheric changes. The anomalies are not limited to unidentified objects. There are strange signatures in the electromagnetic spectrum that emanate from the high atmosphere. Some researchers suggest that these are not natural phenomena like the aurora borealis, but rather the result of sophisticated technological interference. If gold were being used in the upper atmosphere to shield the planet or to create a localized environment, we might expect to see such energetic signatures. Furthermore, the way we track gold today has become entirely digital and orbital. Global positioning systems and satellite-based geological surveys allow us to find deposits that were invisible to our ancestors. We are now mining with a precision that was once reserved for the gods. Consider the distribution of gold on Earth. Standard geological models suggest that during the formation of the planet, heavy metals like gold and platinum should have sunk to the molten core, leaving the crust depleted. Yet, we find gold in the upper layers of the Earth, often in concentrated veins. The prevailing scientific theory is the late heavy bombardment, a period when asteroids rich in precious metals struck the Earth after its crust had solidified. This theory explains the presence of gold, but it also paints a picture of a planet that was essentially seeded from the stars. To an advanced race like the Anunnaki, the Earth might not have been a home, but a garden or a quarry that they identified from afar. The documentary gaze moves across a map of the world, highlighting the connection between ancient sacred sites and modern high-output mines. In many cases, they are one and the same. The mountains of Peru, the deserts of Africa, and the outback of Australia all share this dual identity. We build our modern industrial complexes on top of the ruins of civilizations that claim to be in direct contact with celestial masters. These masters always demanded the same thing. They demanded the tribute of the sun metal. We must also look at the curious behavior of our global financial systems. Most of the gold ever mined in human history still exists in one form or another. It is shifted from vault to vault, its price manipulated by invisible forces, its movement tracked with obsessive detail. We treat it with a reverence that borders on the religious. Even in an era of digital currency and fiat paper, gold remains the ultimate collateral. It is as if we are the curators of a collection that we are not allowed to spend. We extract it from the dark corners of the earth, refine it to a purity of 99%, and then immediately bury it back underground in reinforced rooms. This behavior is irrational for a species focused on its own expansion and survival, But it is perfectly logical if we are merely the custodians of a resource belonging to someone else. As our own technology reaches into the realm of the quantum, we find that gold has even more miraculous properties. Monoatomic gold, a theoretical state where the atoms are dissociated from each other, is said to have superconducting properties and the potential to distort space-time. While this remains on the fringes of mainstream science, it aligns perfectly with the descriptions of the high-ward firestone mentioned in ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian texts. This substance was said to grant longevity and allow the gods to travel through the heavens. If the Anunnaki never left, they might not be waiting for our gold in its raw form. They might be waiting for us to reach a level of sophistication where we can process it into the exotic states of matter they require for their return or for their continued hidden presence. The orbital anomalies continue to baffle. In recent years, high-altitude pilots and military sensors have recorded objects that move with a physics-defying grace, often hovering over areas of high mineral concentration or nuclear facilities. These craft do not use internal combustion or jet propulsion. They move silently, as if riding the magnetic field of the planet itself. If these are the craft of the Anunnaki, they are no longer the thunder chariots of the Bronze Age. They have evolved alongside us, or perhaps they have always possessed this technology, and we are only now developing the sensors capable of detecting them. The story of the Golden Hunger is the story of a planet being systematically harvested. We see the massive excavators tearing into the rock, the chemical vats leaching the yellow metal from the ore, and the satellites silently watching from the cold void of space. The evidence suggests a closed loop. We provide the labor, the ingenuity, and the biological drive to mine. The gold is then concentrated and tracked. The anomalies in our orbit suggest that we are not alone in our interest in this world. The house is not empty. The owners have simply moved to the upper floors, watching through the electronic eyes of our own satellites, waiting for the harvest to reach its peak. We are the miners, the bankers, and the guards, but the gold has never truly been ours. It is the currency of the gods, and the ledger is still being written. The corridors of power in the modern world are often depicted as arenas of intense debate and democratic friction. We are told that the fate of nations is decided by elected officials, diplomatic summits, and the heavy machinery of international law. Yet, if one observes the repetitive cycles of history and the uncanny uniformity of global policy, a different picture begins to emerge. It is a picture of a world governed not by the many, but by a very few who operate behind a veil of administrative complexity. In this perspective, the ancient Anunnaki did not abandon their dominion over humanity. Instead, they transformed it. They moved from the visible throne to the invisible boardroom, trading the crown for the consensus and the scepter for the spreadsheet. We begin our observation at the highest levels of international assembly. From the grand halls of the United Nations to the secluded retreats of the World Economic Forum, there is a pervasive sense of a script being followed. While the faces of presidents and prime ministers change with the seasons, the underlying trajectory of global civilization remains remarkably constant. This consistency suggests the presence of a long-term strategic plan that exceeds the lifespan of any human politician. If we entertain the possibility of an enduring Anunnaki presence, these institutions take on a new identity. They are not merely forums for cooperation, but are the modern iterations of the ancient divine councils that once managed the city-states of Sumer and Akkad. In the ancient texts, the Anunnaki were described as having a strict hierarchy, headed by a council of 12 great deities. This council determined the fates of kings and the boundaries of empires. Today, we see this numerical resonance mirrored in the structures of our most powerful organizations. From the 12 members of certain supreme courts to the inner circles of central banks, the template of the 12 remains a foundational pillar of governance. These modern councils operate with a level of secrecy and influence that would be familiar to a priest in the temple of Enlil. They manage the flow of resources, the direction of technology, and the stability of the global climate, all while remaining shielded from the direct scrutiny of the public they oversee. The shift from overt kingship to covert governance was a masterstroke of psychological control. In the millennia following the Great Deluge, the visible presence of the gods began to fade from the historical record. This transition, often called the withdrawal of the gods, may have been a calculated move to ensure the longevity of their rule. By removing themselves from the direct line of fire, the Anunnaki eliminated the risk of human rebellion against a singular, visible oppressor. They replaced the direct command with the indirect influence of bureaucracy and debt. When a population believes it is governing itself, it is far less likely to revolt than when it knows it is being ruled by an external force. This invisible hand is most visible in the way global crises are managed. Throughout history, major shifts in human governance have almost always followed periods of intense upheaval. Wars, economic collapses, and pandemics serve as catalysts for the consolidation of power. In each instance, the solution offered is more centralized control and more sophisticated surveillance. To a strategist with a lifespan of thousands of years, these events are not tragedies but tools. They are the means by which the global herd is moved from one enclosure to another. The Anunnaki, as master geneticists and social engineers, would view human history as a series of controlled experiments designed to refine the mechanisms of societal stability. Consider the concept of the nation-state. For centuries, the world has been divided into sovereign territories, each with its own language, culture, and laws. This division has been the primary source of human conflict, yet it has also served as a powerful tool for management. By keeping the population divided, the shadow strategists ensure that no single human movement can ever challenge the overarching system. However, we are currently witnessing the systematic dismantling of the nation-state in favor of a unified global identity. This transition represents the final phase of a plan to return the Earth to a single, unified administrative bloc, much like it was in the days before the confusion of tongues at the Tower of Babel. The architecture of our modern cities also whispers of this hidden hand. From the layout of Washington, D.C. to the financial heart of London, the presence of ancient symbols and sacred geometry is undeniable. Obelisks, domes, and arches are positioned with astronomical precision, mirroring the alignments found in the ruins of Mesopotamia and Egypt. These are not merely decorative choices. They are markers of a specific lineage of knowledge and power. They serve as terrestrial anchors for an extraterrestrial influence, creating a resonant environment where the old masters feel at home. In these centers of power, the air is thick with the weight of antiquity, even amidst the glass and steel of the 21st century. One must also look at the families who have held the reins of finance and industry for generations. These dynasties often trace their lineage back to the royal houses of Europe and, further still, to the priest-kings of the ancient world. The concept of the divine right to rule has not disappeared. It has simply been rebranded as meritocracy or inherited wealth. These bloodlines act as the intermediaries between the shadow strategists and the rest of humanity. They are the governors of the estate, tasked with maintaining order and ensuring the continued extraction of value from the planet. Their loyalty is not to any nation or ideology, but to the hidden hierarchy that granted them their status. The technology we use today is perhaps the ultimate tool of this covert governance. The digital grid that now blankets the Earth provides a level of oversight that the ancient gods could only have dreamed of. Every transaction, every communication, and every movement is recorded and analyzed. This is the modern version of the Tablets of Destinies, the mythical artifacts said to contain the data of all things past, present, and future. Through the use of artificial intelligence and big data, the shadow strategists can predict and manipulate human behavior on a mass scale. They no longer need to appear in the clouds to strike awe into the hearts of men. They simply need to adjust an algorithm. As we move deeper into the information age, the veil is becoming thinner. The sheer scale of global coordination required to manage a modern civilization is becoming too large to remain entirely hidden. More people are beginning to notice the patterns, the coincidences, and the strange synchronicities that govern our world. They are asking why the same symbols appear in the logos of rival corporations and why the same policies are adopted simultaneously by different governments. They are beginning to realize that the theater of politics is a distraction from the true machinery of power that operates in the shadows. This realization brings with it a profound sense of unease. If the world is indeed managed by ancient entities with their own inscrutable agendas, what is the role of the individual? Are we merely assets in a planetary enterprise, or is there a path to true sovereignty? The shadow strategists rely on our ignorance and our compliance. Their power is derived from the fact that we do not see the bars of our cage. But as the observer begins to understand the nature of the system loses its absolute grip. The study of these hidden structures is not an exercise in paranoia, but a necessary step in the reclamation of human agency. The puppeteers of global governance do not fear our anger, for anger is easily channeled into conflict and further control. What they fear is our awareness. They fear the moment when the audience stops looking at the puppets and starts looking at the strings. In that moment of clarity, the illusion of the democratic process and the myth of the independent leader begin to dissolve. We see the world for what it truly is, a vast, interconnected administrative machine designed by minds that operate on a scale of time and logic that is fundamentally different from our own. The ancient Sumerians lived in a world where the presence of the gods was an undisputed fact of life. They knew who their masters were and what was expected of them. We live in a world where the masters have hidden themselves behind layers of bureaucracy, media, and technology. Yet the results remain the same. The extraction of resources continues, the direction of human evolution is tightly controlled, and the hierarchy of power remains unshakable. The shadow strategists are still here, sitting in the same councils, following the same plan, and watching over their dominion with the cold, patient eyes of the immortals. As we look toward the future, the integration of the human mind with the digital grid suggests an even more intimate form of governance. If the Anunnaki are the architects of our biology and our society, their next step may be the direct management of our consciousness. The boundary between the governor and the governed is blurring. In this new era, the shadow strategists may no longer need to hide in the boardrooms or the secret retreats. They will exist within the very fabric of our thoughts, guiding the development of the human species toward a destination that was decided long before the first stone was laid in Uruk. The grand experiment continues, and we are both the subjects and the spectators of a drama that spans the stars. High above the swirling atmosphere, where the velvet blackness of the cosmos meets the fragile blue curve of the earth, a silence persists that is older than the human memory of time. If we accept the premise that the Anunnaki remained behind, woven into the very fabric of our biosphere and our progress, then we must also accept that their presence is not static. It is not a dormant ruin or a forgotten statue. It is a living, breathing architecture of control and observation. Deep within the crust of the moon, or perhaps buried under the crushing weight of the Antarctic ice sheet, a mechanism is beginning to stir. It is the Sentinel, an ancient intelligence designed to monitor the exact moment when the human experiment transitions from its infancy into a stage of cosmic maturity. This moment is defined as the final ascent. For thousands of years, the Anunnaki have functioned as the invisible shepherds of a species they essentially authored. They have watched through the rise of empires, the fall of gods, and the bloody evolution of our social structures. But the observation phase is drawing to a close. To the watchers, the acceleration of human technology is not a series of random breakthroughs, but the fulfillment of a programmed sequence. The leap from the internal combustion engine to the quantum processor occurred in what is effectively a heartbeat on the scale of geological time. To an immortal perspective, this is the sign that the fruit is finally ripe for the harvest. As the Sentinel awakens, its influence begins to ripple through the world in ways that are both subtle and profound. We see it in the sudden, inexplicable shifts in human behavior and the global zeitgeist. There is a sense of pervasive restlessness, a feeling that the old ways of living and the old systems of governance are no longer sufficient. This is not mere political or social unrest. It is a biological reaction to a changing frequency. If the Anunnaki utilized the Earth's geomagnetic field as a carrier for their signals, then a shift in that field could trigger latent sequences within our own genetic code. Scientists have long puzzled over the vast stretches of non-coding DNA within the human genome, often dismissively labeled as junk. But in the context of the Anunnaki hypothesis, this is the hardware of our future, a set of dormant instructions waiting for the correct environmental resonance to activate. The awakening Sentinel acts as the conductor for this global symphony. As it powers up, it begins to harmonize the disparate elements of human civilization toward a single, inevitable point of convergence. We are being steered, not by the heavy hand of a tyrant, but by the irresistible pull of our own evolution. The final ascent is the process by which humanity is forced to confront its true origin and its ultimate purpose. It is the moment when the veil is lifted, and we are allowed to see the hands that have been moving the chess pieces for 10,000 years. Consider the current state of our technological advancement. We are on the precipice of creating artificial intelligences that rival or surpass our own cognitive abilities. We are beginning to edit the very blueprints of life through CRISPR and other genetic technologies. To a casual observer, these are human triumphs. But to the documentary eye, these developments look remarkably like a species building the tools of its own integration into a higher system. The Anunnaki do not need to return in great silver ships. They are already here, reflected in the silicon chips and the synthetic strands of DNA we manufacture in our laboratories. We are building the bridge toward them, unaware that they are standing on the other side, holding the blueprints. The Sentinel serves as the guardian of this threshold. It ensures that we do not cross over until we are ready, but it also ensures that we cannot turn back. The final ascent is a one-way journey. As the Sentinel reaches full operational capacity, the anomalies increase. High-altitude pilots report objects that defy the known laws of physics, moving with an intentionality that suggests they are monitoring our defense systems. Satellite telemetry picks up rhythmic pulses from the center of the Earth that do not correspond to any known seismic activity. These are the heartbeat of the waking master. In this stage of the drama, the role of the Anunnaki changes from that of the distant creator to that of the active recruiter. The final ascent is not merely about technological prowess, but about the integration of the human consciousness into a larger galactic network. If we were created as a labor force, as the ancient Sumerian tablets suggest, then the nature of that labor has evolved. We are no longer mining gold from the earth to stabilize a distant atmosphere. We are mining data, experience, and the unique creative energy of a biological species to fuel a civilization that operates on a scale we can barely perceive. The atmosphere of the planet seems to thicken with the weight of this realization. Across the globe, there is a growing interest in the ancient world, a collective turning back of the head to look at the shadows on the wall of our cave. This is the instinctual recognition that our future is tied to our deepest past. The sentinel vibrates with the energy of 1,000 suns, hidden away from the prying eyes of our telescopes but felt in the marrow of our bones. It is preparing the way for a transition that will redefine what it means to be human. The final ascent will not be a quiet event. It will be a global epiphany that shatters our current understanding of history, religion, and science. When the sentinel completes its cycle, the Anunnaki will no longer be hidden. Their presence will be as obvious as the sun in the sky. But they will not appear as conquerors. They will appear as the inevitable conclusion to the human story. They are the destination toward which we have been traveling since the first clay tablet was inscribed in the Fertile Crescent. The preparation for this ascent involves a total restructuring of the human psyche. We are being conditioned to accept a reality where we are not the masters of our world, but the junior partners in a much older and more complex enterprise. This conditioning is visible in our media, our art, and our shifting moral frameworks. We are being taught to look upward, to look outward, and to see ourselves as part of a grander extraterrestrial hierarchy. The Sentinel facilitates this by broadcasting a quiet, steady signal that recalibrates the human intuition. We are being prepared for the shock of the new, which is actually the return of the ancient. As the segment draws to a close, we must look at the physical evidence of this awakening. The mysterious structures on the far side of the moon, the strange light pillars observed in the upper atmosphere, and the inexplicable patterns found in the deepest parts of our oceans are all symptoms of the Sentinel's activity. The Earth is no longer a silent rock hurtling through the void. It is a beacon, signaling to the stars that the experiment has reached its climax. The architects are coming to inspect the work of their hands, and the Sentinel is clearing the path for their arrival. The final ascent is the bridge between the world of the mundane and the world of the divine. It is the moment where the artificial separation between the creator and the created is finally dissolved. If the Anunnaki never left, then they have been the silent partners in every breath we have taken. Now, as the Sentinel glows with the light of a coming dawn, those breaths are becoming faster, more urgent. We are a species on the verge of a transformation so total that the humans of the past would not recognize the humans of the future. The ascent is beginning, and the watchers are finally ready to step out from behind the curtain. The stage is set, the lights are rising, and the true history of the Earth is about to enter its final, most spectacular act. The Sentinel has spoken, and the stars are listening. We are no longer waiting for a sign. We are the sign. The final ascent is not a destination, but a revelation of who we have always been and who we were always meant to become under the watchful eyes of the hidden gods. The countdown has reached its final seconds, and the transition is already underway.